Weddings then and now are great occasions of joy. Weddings then in Jesus' time were drawn-out affairs in the most beautiful way. They went on for several days. Those who invited the guests not only invited their family and friends, but entire villages were told to put their lives on hold because something beautiful and marvelous and wonderful was happening here in the community. In sacred scripture, the wedding feast is often used as what awaits us, the relationship God desires with us, a feast that has gone totally correct, the joy and fellowship at the table. It counterbalances the meal that went wrong back in the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of good and bad. Since then, God is making overtures through many voices to bring people back into right relationship. The wedding feast, the marriage of humanity and divinity, heaven and earth, that's all being played out in sacred scripture. It's the rich symbol of that restoration that God desires. And Jesus traces that salvation history in this parable, saying that the patriarchs and the prophets have been summoning people to commune with each other, with God, for many, many years. But they refused to come to the feast, unfortunately. One scripture scholar said, that's one of the saddest lines in the Bible. They refused to come to the feast. Don't we receive many invitations to practice our faith? Those invitations, think for a moment who has invited you to the faith. Parents, godparents, mentors, neighbors. Perhaps it was an epiphany you had to consider the glory and grandeur of God. Maybe it's a certain place where God has invited you to pray. Perhaps it is tuning into this broadcast today on television or on the internet. And when we're planning a feast, don't we want everybody to, first of all, respond to the invitation and then hopefully accept? Because we want the best for someone. We want them to be well-fed, to have joy. God desires that for us. But refusals can hurt. Ultimately, in our relationship with God, it is we who suffer if we refuse that. With God, there is a need to reassess our priorities, to say, yes, we may think that things get in the way, like those in the parable. I have to go tend to my business. But if we put God first and foremost in our life, all those responsibilities are made more full and holy. We are not called to refuse that moment. We are called to accept the invitation, to respond well, and then to be transformed. It's just not enough to attend the wedding feast, but we have to put on the garment. Many weddings that I've celebrated over the 19 years of priesthood, people forget things. People forget the rings, the wedding license. This past weekend, someone forgot the flowers. But we wait for these things to happen. They come and we celebrate. We are not to forget anything. Our baptismal call to holiness, when we put on that garment of faith. But we are called to be transformed over and over again through the transformative power of this Eucharist that we are called to. Christ has invited you to tune in today, to pray with and for each other, to receive spiritual communion by the prayers at this Eucharistic feast. We are gathered. We are fed and transformed by this Eucharist. May we accept the invitation each day of our life and choose Him as the center of our life.